Hello and welcome to the Cancer Research UK Cambridge Centre podcast, the All About Radiotherapy series. This series is brought to you by the CRUK RadNet Cambridge programme in partnership with our lovely patient and public involvement and engagement group. So today's episode, I'm joined by three of our Addenbrooke's radiographers, Dan, Cristina and Poppy, to talk about their role as therapeutic radiographers in the radiotherapy department and the impact they have on people coming to department.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. So Dan Driver is our therapeutic radiographer and our practice educator for the University of Suffolk students. We've got Cristina Ferreira, who has been a therapeutic radiographer qualified for 13 years and is our head of technical operations. And we have Poppy Howe, who's also a therapeutic radiographer with 10 years experience and is our advanced practitioner with a special interest in breast radiotherapy. So first of all, we'll start with Dan. Can you briefly tell us about your role as therapeutic radiographer?
My role as a therapeutic radiographer basically comes down to three separate things. So therapeutic radiographer is a qualified healthcare professional. They're responsible for delivery of radiotherapy and they deal solely with cancer patients. So that's sort of the role as a therapeutic radiographer.
And where would we usually see you in the radiotherapy department, Dan?
You'd find me everywhere, basically. I'm on all of the treatment modalities or the different techniques that we use. So any machine that we use, I'm on, and that's not just delivering the radiotherapy treatment, but also before the radiotherapy treatment, having the CT scan beforehand. So yeah, that's where you'd find me, is basically everywhere in the department.
Thank you so much, Dan. And Cristina, there's different roles within radiotherapy. So how does your role slightly differ?
So my current role is a little bit office-based. So I'm usually sitting in what I call my little cave. And as part of the role, I sort of educate and train the therapeutic radiographers in terms of sort of techniques, implementing those techniques, looking for any developments that we can do within our profession and within sort of treating those patients and ensuring that, you know, we've got high standards within our service provision. And also, you know, I like to think that I'm in a role where I can support and really drive the therapeutic radiographers to achieving whichever they want to achieve within their profession, because there's so many different areas that you can sort of have a particular interest in and can really use those skills to drive us forward.
Your usual day is more office-based, Cristina, but you have been on the treatment floor as well. You're usually there helping out the radiographers if needs be.
Yeah, so yeah, I've only sort of 12 and a half years of my qualified time I've spent treating patients, and absolutely my day is all about always being available to support both therapeutic radiographers and patients when necessary, when there's challenges within sort of the treatment delivery, but also if there's any other issues within the department. I never have a planned day as such. I come in and every day is a little bit different because that's the nature of our job. So all patients are different, all therapeutic radiographers are different. Every day for me is very different to each other.
Thank you so much. And Poppy, your role is within advanced practice for breast radiotherapy. How is this different from Dan and Cristina's role?
Hello. So essentially, an advanced practitioner is someone who has developed an area of expertise within a specialist area, so mine being breast radiotherapy. So essentially, we try and adhere to the 4 pillars of advanced practice. So we try and keep in our role a sort of even split of leadership, management, education, and research. But I would say that my main focus within my role is to be someone who is there to essentially help support the patients through their radiotherapy journey. So being able to transform and modernise the pathways of care, and essentially giving safe and effective sharing of skills of radiotherapy, and really offering advice to patients and supporting them is the most fundamental part of my role.
And where would we usually see you on your day-to-day? What's your sort of day-to-day look like?
My day-to-day does vary quite a lot. It can be either quite sort of schedule-based or on an ad hoc basis of seeing patients. But essentially, my week is split being a part of the sort of multidisciplinary team and being involved in that initial patient referral for breast radiotherapy, being involved in that the patient's consenting aspect of radiotherapy and introducing myself as the key person. So being really involved in those clinics, being in the department as sort of easily accessible as I can be if patients on treatment have issues with any side effects or any queries based on the treatment that they're having. So I'm there to help support, as I said, and give information to them. But also something that I learned fairly but before I even came into this role is actually you can also make this job what you want it to be. So your areas of interest you can actually bring into this role and develop your own scope of practice. So something that I like to do is also keep abreast of the sort of techniques and the planning side of radiotherapy. So also part of my job is doing some of the sort of clinical outlining for breast radiotherapy, and helping out with a lot of the clinical trials that we're sort of a part of as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And this is a question for each of you. We start with you, Dan. So how does you being on the treatment floor, what does that mean for the patient? How does it impact them?
So my role on the treatment floor basically goes down to the fact that I see patients daily. Every single day, I'll see the same sort of group of patients on a daily basis. So it's supporting people through their actual radiotherapy treatment, making sure that they've got the correct information, making sure they're keeping calm during their treatment and making sure they're keeping still, things like that. So supporting them through the actual day-to-day journey of having the radiotherapy itself. On set, we also offer support for side effects as well. So giving support for anything that might be happening to patients during their treatment. That's another big part of my role on the actual treatment floor as well. And also signposting to the correct sort of organizations if we need to go further than that. So any counseling that some people might need, or if they need to speak to a doctor, anything like that. So that's what my role means to patients on the actual treatment floor itself.
And Dan, I'm going to put you a bit on the spot here. We say that our role is called a therapeutic radiographer. What is the difference between that and what we would call a diagnostic radiographer?
So therapeutic radiographers deal solely with patients with cancer. Diagnostic radiographers are actually involved in the diagnosing process for any sort of disease. So if a doctor needs a scan, then a diagnostic radiographer will give them a scan, a CT scan, MRI scan, a chest x-ray, anything like that. Whereas a therapeutic radiographer is a little bit different. In our aspect of things, a therapeutic radiographer will be able to give scans, but not in the traditional sense of we are diagnosing. We're giving scans for the purpose of planning radiotherapy. We're giving scans for the purpose of seeing what a patient's like every single day on their treatment. Diagnostic radiographers can't deliver radiotherapy treatment. Yes, it's still x-rays, but we deliver high energy x-rays to actually deliver the radiotherapy. So that's sort of my little difference between diagnostic and therapeutic radiographers.
Very well said. Cristina, what does your role mean for the patient? We kind of touched upon it earlier, but how does your role, what does it mean? How does it impact them?
So just touching a little bit on what Dan said, it's still very much part of my role to be still on the treatment units, running with the therapeutic radiographers and offering that support to patients during what it is such a difficult time in their lives. And that is something that as a therapeutic radiographer, it will never change, irrespective of what roles I think we get to be on. That sort of kindness to the patients and ensuring that we can support them through their treatment will always be part of any of the roles that we will sort of try and develop or seek into progression in our career. Specifically in the role that I'm in, I like to think that I'll always be an advocate for patients to receive the best possible treatment that they can, and ensuring that to the best of my ability, I can have the therapeutic radiographers continuing that high standard of care, whether that is from a technical point of view and ensuring that the radiographers are trained well and they are aware of the techniques that we can offer and that they're obviously working to the high standards that we expect them to. And even in terms of, like Dan was mentioning, in terms of offering support from the side effects, we having 10 plus years of experience, that is something that I'm quite passionate that needs to be passed on. And it's also sort of correlated, isn't it? Because if we're able to offer that support, it then means that we can support Poppy in her advanced practice role as well. And we can work so well as a team to ultimately offer our patients the best treatment we can. And that's something I'm very passionate about, and I'd like to continue in my role.
I agree. I think it's something that I think most, if not all of us, really like about this role, and we'll go on to see how we got into the profession, but it's something that I think really comes across in the radiographers we train, and what we see from the students is that that's the passion that we really want to instill in those who come through to do radiotherapy as a profession. Poppy, would you like to add anything to that?
I would just like to add that every individual that comes through as a therapy radiographer is there to essentially care for the patients and really try and help them manage the radiotherapy, or I guess in my role it sometimes involves not just radiotherapy but also the hormone treatments that people are on, or sometimes the chemotherapy and all those sort of additional side effects and that emotional roller coaster that they go through. And it's really about being there to support them and doing anything that we can to make this process for them as easy and as stress-free and less anxiety inducing as much as we can. But I think we all have a real caring side to ourselves as anyone that comes into that profession. That's really something that I think we can all be really proud of.
So, as we mentioned, all of us have kind of come into the profession potentially in a very different way, sometimes quite surprising. And often what I find is the route that people come into radiotherapy is very different. So for myself, I just stumbled upon radiotherapy in college whilst doing an essay. So I'm quite interested to hear how you guys all found out about the profession and why you actually became a radiographer.
So at the point in my life where I was looking at going to university, I was actually struggling a lot with A levels and GCSEs and all that sort of stuff. And I wanted a profession that could actually aid me in my skills. So I was very into acting. I was very into drama, which means that I can talk for England. And so as a result of this, I wanted something what was quite sociable. So I looked for a job that was quite sociable. Now, another thing that I am is I'm a bit of a nerd. I like science, and I always have liked science. So I wanted a job that could involve both the social aspects of what I wanted to do, and I wanted a job that had something I could nerd out about, to have some technology to look at, to have some science to understand. What happened was my brother, his friend was a therapy radiographer, and he brought me around the radiotherapy center in Ipswich. And I remember the first thing that really stuck out to me was I really liked the look of the lasers in the room. And that was one thing I was like, wow, I want to go into a profession that's got lasers in it. This is amazing. So I asked, well, what else is there to being a therapy radiographer? And he said about talking to people and about the technology aspect of things. I was like, oh my goodness, this is something I really, really need to do. So as a result, it gave me a goal. And as a result of that, I actually got my A levels on track, I got my GCSEs on track, and I went to university and I became a therapeutic radiographer. So that's my story of going into radiotherapy.
So I don't think my story is as fun as Dan's. I've always known that I wanted to work in a hospital setting because I always found that area a particular interest for me, and I like the thought of being able to help people. I originally thought I was going to do medicine, but I didn't get the grades. And then I moved countries, and I remember sitting during my UCAS, sort of filling the forms and thinking, what am I going to do now, finishing my A levels? And the person that at the time was sort of supporting the students with their careers, he sort of mentioned, why not radiography? And I thought, oh, don't really know much about it. And I went to Northampton and I saw their diagnostic department. And then I saw the radiotherapy department, and I knew instantly that that was what I wanted, because you support patients throughout a course of treatment. So you don't just see them once. And the idea of making a difference to treat cancer patients was something that I almost instantly then sort of felt quite passionate about. And it's been the case ever since. Even during times of stress and panic with exams, the idea that I could make a teeny tiny bit of difference that is so massive for that particular individual at the time, there's nothing like it, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I think similarly, I wasn't aware of radiotherapy at the time, and I'd already chosen my A levels. It's a bit controversial. I had, because I'd already picked them. My A levels were French, PE, art, and English language. And with those, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. We had a careers interview, and my nan at the time, she'd been diagnosed with a sort of dormant form of leukemia, and I was really interested in that, and knew I was interested in cancer. Obviously, medicine was a thought, but I thought absolutely chosen the wrong A levels there. So it was sort of to see what else was available, and I had this careers interview, and she came back with about 4 A4 pages of lists of things to look into. And first one being an art therapist. So I Googled that, had a look, thought, it's quite interesting. Second one, radiotherapy. I thought, never heard of it, let's have a look. And was just absolutely taken in by the explanation of what radiotherapy was and what it involved. And so it took, a bit more time and looking into it, and actually got in touch with the local department and just thought, could I come around and have some work experience, and spent some time where I currently work, and just thought, the first time I saw it, just thought I loved it. Every single element to that, the radiotherapy process, how technical it was, but also a really practical side of things. Fascinated by the fact we could shape the radiotherapy beam with MLCs, and our technology 10 years ago was not as advanced as it is now, but just remember being absolutely fascinated, and went home and just ranted to my mum about how amazing this was and that this is what I wanted to do. And yeah, got signed up to the UCAS and went down that route. I think it's good to know that people, I guess my A levels were not the most sort of medically based or scientifically based, but actually all the anatomy and physiology that I did through my PE was actually what got me onto the core. I also have managed to use a bit of my artistic flair in radiotherapy by painting some of the masks. So yeah, that was always quite good to get that in there. So that's how I came into the profession.
Amazing, thank you. And as suspected, everyone's journey is very, very different. So my final question is, where do you actually see radiotherapy taking us in the next 5 to 10 years? So Dan, we'll start with you.
Okay, so In 5 to 10 years in radiotherapy, I think is actually pretty hard to tell where we're going to be, because 10 years ago, I don't know if anyone would have really known exactly where we are today, because radiotherapy is a constantly evolving profession. There's a few guesses that we can make. It seems that things are going into radiotherapy without tattoos for patients, something called surface guided. And there's some more updates in technology, MRI, Linacs, protons, things like that, which are all different ways of delivering radiotherapy.
Thank you so much, Dan. And it's good that you mentioned surface guided and protons. And we have 2 other podcast episodes in our other series, which is Future of Radiotherapy, which goes through these 2 new techniques. So please take a listen to those if you haven't already. And Cristina, could you tell us a little bit about where do you think the future of the radiotherapy will take us the next 5 to 10 years?
So I'd like to think a bit like Dan. It's difficult to predict where it's going to be, but I'd like to see radiotherapy having more of a sort of people having more of an awareness of how much difference we make with radiotherapy. And certainly COVID has forced us to use radiotherapy in different settings than maybe we wouldn't have done before. And that's quite exciting because we do so good with the treatments that we deliver. So, and I'd like to continue to see that develop and seeing the provision of the service to be more standardized across the country. From a very selfish point of view, I would like to see therapeutic radiographers being able to lead more on some of the more technical side of things that we do, and really pushing for that education and for the development of those skills.
I think I'm going to go a bit more on the national scale, but I think there just needs to be a lot more provision for radiotherapy. We know how effective it is, we know that it's safe, and we know that we can use it, more conformably now than we could 10, 20 years ago. And I think we need to get rid of this stigma that radiotherapy causes really harsh side effects. Whilst we know there are side effects, they're a lot more manageable now than they were 10 years ago with the techniques that we were using. And I think, like Cristina said, if we can, as a profession, really help lead the way in that and help develop that and just really advertise ourselves more as a profession. Even in the last 10 years, people still don't know what we do or what radiotherapy is unless they know someone that's had radiotherapy or they've gone through cancer treatment themselves. And that's something that we really do need to change. But technology is ever evolving, and I think, as both Dan and Cristina have said, that's going to be the main game changer, is how can we continue to evolve the services by giving the best treatments safely, effectively, and improving outcomes for patients.
Amazing. I agree with all of the above. Thank you. Thank you so much for all 3 of you for joining me for this episode and for taking the time out to be on. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.